So, do we have that clip, Coach Paul?
Indeed.
I want to hear y'all's takes in reaction to it first, and then I'll break down sort of what it inspired me to go look up.
Total points. In order to score 40,000 points, you need to average 24 points per game or 2,000 points per season for 20 seasons. Only 6 players have ever played 20 seasons or more in the NBA, let alone score 24 points per game in each of them. The average points per game for NBA scoring titles since 1980 or since the three-point line was introduced is an average of 31.16 points per game. So to win 10 scoring titles, you need to average 31 points per game for at least 10 seasons in your career. With these parameters, only 2 players since the three-point era got close: Michael Jordan and Allen Iverson. AI only has 3 seasons with over 31 points per game. LeBron only has 1 scoring title when he averaged 30 points per game in 2008. From a pure probability perspective, both feats are equally as rare as only 1 player achieved each feat. Now, if we widen the parameters to allow players who got close, more players did get close to 40,000 points than they did to 10 scoring titles. Kareem is 5% behind the 40K feat, Karl Malone is 9% behind, Kobe is 17% behind, and Jordan himself is 20% behind. On the flip side, Wilt is in second place with 7 scoring titles, which is 30% away from Jordan's 10. Kevin Durant and George Gervin each have 4, which is 60% away. LeBron only has 1, which is 90% away from Jordan's 10. From a purely mathematical perspective, it is more likely you get closer to 40,000 points than you do 10 scoring titles.
What do y'all think? How y'all feeling?
The post was interesting. First of all, there was a lot of mathematics there. I'll be quick because I think I know where you're going, but there's a lot of mathematics to that post. But I like the post because it kind of lays out something I try to keep in mind. I think stats and everything and accolades and all that is really important. That's how you determine different talent levels. But what I like about the post is basically telling us put context to everything, which I think a lot of people don't do. To me, I think Jordan is the best scorer that this game has seen so far. I think he's the greatest of all time, but specifically, he is the greatest scorer. And I think that post kind of lays out why. He did it at a peak for 10 years straight. And it's something that's extremely hard to do. It kind of puts this perspective. It kind of gives us context that he was really just this nice for 10 years. It was the peak of the peak for this amount of time, and no one was better. And that's what makes him the GOAT. For LeBron's 40,000, it is great. Don't get me wrong. But you kind of see mad people got close to the 40,000, which doesn't take anything away from LeBron. But I feel like people try to put it in a different light. And while it does make him great in its own right, it is probably due to his longevity, which is a greatness of itself. But my takeaway from the post is just have context when you talk about things. Not to say that LeBron's 40. I'm not even trying to say it's not even I'm not trying to say one is greater than the other, but I just like the context of it. And I think that's what the post is getting out of me. I think it's even more so when it comes to advanced stats. I use those trying to put what my eye test sees in context. And I think that's where Pharaoh's got to go into in a little bit, but it's all about context when you talk about these type of stats. And that's what the post is trying to tell people, I guess. I don't know if that's what y'all tried to got out of it either.
I respect it.
I
respect it, Paul.
Yeah.
All right, listen. First thing, he's trying to take away from LeBron.
That's
exactly
okay.
Because he literally said, this is harder to do than this. He's literally taking away from LeBron. That's the first thing. The second thing, this post was annoying. I know why. I figured out on the second time watching it. I figured out why. It's interesting, but it's annoying because at the end of the day, right? Both are hard to do, and very hard to do, and both are why. If any other player had one of those feats, they're automatically top 10 ever, right?
Yes.
Automatically. But at the end of the day, right? My first reaction to it was that he's doing too much. But in my opinion, the greatest thing you could do in the sport of basketball is win an NBA title as the definitive best player.
Yes.
That's the hardest
Is that
thing.
the hard? Well, I'll let you finish.
As the definitively best player, that is absolutely the hardest thing to do, because you have plenty of people who have scored a lot of points. They haven't scored as 40,000, but who's to say if AI kept his body in shape long enough that he would have scored 40,000, right? Who's to say if he didn't have people like politics being in play against him that he would have scored 40,000, right? So again, and that's the next thing too, which is why I say he's trying to take away from LeBron. Being good enough long enough to get to 40,000 is crazy. That's hard in and of itself. So that's why I like those two stats, like 10 straight seasons of being a leading scorer or 10 seasons of being a leading scorer in the NBA and scoring 40,000 in your career. Both of them are just equal to me. But the greatest thing is winning the championship as the definitive best player on your team. This video talked nothing about that, but we were comparing greatness though.
All right, can I ask you a question though?
And that's what Andre be talking about with the championships. It's about champion. Like that matters. And we try to strip that away because it's LeBron, and I get why. Because he played harder competition in the finals than Jordan did. But at the end of the day, it's just hard. It's hard. It's hard, but it's about the chips and being the best player on the team that winning the chips. Go ahead.
I just want to ask you one question. If I asked you, I'm not trying to make a debate out of it, but if I asked you who's the best scorer out of the two, who's the better scorer?
Jordan.
Right. Correct. And a lot of people would say LeBron, and they would point to a lot of times all the time. Exactly. And like a lot of people point to that. A lot of people point to that fact that, like, how can you say he's not a better scorer? He scored like 40,000.
Anybody who says that doesn't know ball.
And like,
Carmelo was a better scorer than LeBron.
Exactly, I agree with you.
Kobe's a better, like they don't know ball.
But that's why I like the post and what he's talking about. I don't think he's trying to take away from LeBron, but he's giving you a different reason as to why Jordan is better, and it's really putting into context the stats because LeBron has played all this time at a high level. Don't get me wrong. It's not taken away from him. He's played at a high level, which is why he's able to reach this amazing feat. It's more so like a longevity thing. Not more so a longevity thing, but it's just as much as a longevity thing as it is his talent. I don't know if it's taken away from him though. That's the thing. I don't see. Do you see it that way, Fair? You think it's taken away from him?
Once you say one is harder than the other, see, here's the next thing. Like in society, we like to act like comparison doesn't have a negative impact on the thing that you're comparing, that you're saying is lesser than the other, right? Like you're not critiquing negatively the thing that you're saying. If you're saying that LeBron getting 40,000 is not as hard as Jordan leading the league in scoring 10 times, then you are saying this feat, it might be great, but it's not as great as this other feat. So therefore, you are taking away, like right now, the thing that people that has people pushing LeBron up all time right now, the narrative right now, like you said, Alan, is the points, the all-time point, that and the longevity. Like that's the narrative that the LeBron fans are hanging on to right now. So when you're saying no, this is not as impressive as y'all are trying to make it seem, you're taking a little bit away from LeBron's greatness, which is why Stephen A is always on First Take talking about he's a great father, he's this, he's that. I gotta say that because
wonderful businessman.
Every time I critique, because when you critique and it's not always positive, then you are potentially taking away from somebody's greatness even a little bit. Because this is nitpicking in a way, and I think nitpicking is important when it comes to greatness. But I'm just saying, you're taking away a little bit. You can't act like he's not.
Yeah. Word.
No, it definitely is. It definitely is. Here's how the reason why I liked the video is because because LeBron stan culture is so stat oriented in their arguments.
True.
And I come from a stan culture that is also very stat oriented in its arguments. Right. I think this video sort of expresses a perspective of how to really put stats in context without the sort of cultural arguments that people try to make of like, oh, this was a harder era, or defense was whatever, spacing whatever. Like those arguments like are sort of like airy, and like there's no way to like make that concrete for purposes of a conversation, right? It's going to just be on whatever everyone's memory is, or what their belief in terms of what they watched in. But like, if we're going to go off numbers, this like puts those numbers in mathematical perspective to understand what those numbers actually mean as a measurement across the field, right? So like, for example, and I love that you brought this up, when people ask who's the better scorer, right? Like, is total points the proper measurement to answer that question, right? Because total points is a product of not just ability to score, but consistency of scoring and availability to score, right? So LeBron, him having the most points speaks to the fact that he's remained an effective scorer longer than anybody ever, right? But does that mean that he is the most effective scorer there ever has been, right? In isolation? No. That's why I think the more pertinent stat would be career average, right? Every time you step out, how many points do you usually score, right? And if we look at that, that would be MJ at 30.12, right? So yes, LeBron stayed a really good scorer longer than Michael Jordan kept his powers. But at the peak of their powers, every time they stepped out, Michael Jordan on average is scoring more points than LeBron. Kevin Durant on average is scoring more points than LeBron. Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic on average are scoring more points than LeBron in their career. Here's the issue. People continue to play after they become no longer effective, which muddies these numbers, right? So like, we look like, for example, intuitively we want to say Kobe Bryant probably every time he stepped out during the time of his prime was going to score more points on average than LeBron, right? The problem is he stepped out for like 5 years past when that was the case, and that messed up his career average, because his career average is now only 24.99. He's 16th all time, when we know he's not the 16th most effective scorer ever. So I like the idea of like taking a stat and then applying other mathematical components to it to isolate what you're really actually trying to understand from the stat, right? So like, maybe if we looked at someone's career average not as the singular number, but if we looked at it as a chart, right, and we had their career average for every season they played, and if y'all know about bell curves and all that stuff, right, you knock off the numbers that are anomalies to get to the actual mean and average, right? You know that those numbers are it like exceptions that are messing up the real number you're trying to get to, so you just take them out. If we did that with everyone, if we lined up everyone's career averages by season on a curve graph, and we knocked off every anomaly, right? So I'm just gonna name random players, like the year Paul George came back from his injury where he only played 30 games. Get that year out of his career average, right? Of course, the year Kobe came back from his Achilles and then broke his knee and then all the whatever and played 20 games. Get that year out of his career average, right? Like people's rookie years, people's sophomore years where they don't get playing time, right? Get that out of their career average, right? If we did that so that we actually get like the statistical significant averages, I bet you that number would look a lot different. So I just like that perspective of like, what are we actually trying to understand from this stat, and how can we apply perspective to the stat to get that understanding? Because that's what I'm thinking with what he broke down. Like, I get your point, Paul, that like none of this really matters, and you hold them equal. And he even said that he's like, from a pure rarity standpoint, only one person has done either So yes, they are equal, but what are we trying to actually understand about them when we look at those stats? We're trying to understand separation from the field.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
We're trying to understand separation from the field. So yes, if we're going on ranking, then they both have equal separation from the field because they're one in the category, right? You're one in scoring titles and you're one in total points. So it's equal. Y'all are both one in that category from the field. But that's not really helping us understand the separation from the field. We got to go in and look at what is 2, right? Like what is the distance between 1 and 2? Because that's actually telling us the separation. So that's what he's saying. Like for Bron, like, yes, you're 1, but the separation between you at 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5 is not that crazy. You just outlasted everybody. The distance between 1 and 2 in scoring titles with Mike is astronomical. like he has 10 AI, or he has 6, AI has 3. No, he has 10. AI has and the next person is like Wilt with like 6. And then after that, it goes down to like 2s and 3s, bro. Like no one has even come close to getting 10. So like
the fact that he has more than Wilt is crazy. That's
bro. Like what's in a modern era? This man was the best scorer in the league 10 times, bro. Like so.
I'll say this. I'm sure LeBron knows this, and is probably gonna. This is probably why he's gonna play like 25 seasons. So that gap is like crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that would go to that would help, right? Because like if he pushes the number to like 50,000, then distance from the field is stupid, and then it becomes a more statistically significant stat. But that's and I like that point that maybe is what he's trying to do. But I just want us to encourage us to like apply that perspective to all these stats, right? Like
context, yes, absolutely.
Context, like how different. Yes, that number is great, and you may lead the field in that number in your stat. You like Kobe Bryant leads in All-Star MVPs, right? Kobe Bryant leads in he's the second highest scoring game ever, right? And for a long time, the distance between him and Wilt from everybody else was a lot, but now we've had some people put up 70, right? So like now that 81 is like it's better, but it's not as astronomical from the field as it used to be, right? Like Kobe Bryant has 11 first-team All-NBA selections, right? Like, so I just want us to not just look at where does someone rank in a category when we're talking about stats, but I want us to look at how distant are they from their peers, even if they're not 1, right? Because like Kobe Bryant has 11, and there's 2 of the people that have 11 in LeBron and Karl Malone. So like, he's not singular in that. But if the next person highest only has like 8, then we're talking about the 3 of them in a separate category from the field. That's a better way to understand these stats is like, look at the distance. Like how distinct are they? How unique are they from their peers, regardless of where they rank? That's the only thing I wanted to introduce based on that video. And I think that'll make more it allows GOAT conversations and who's better than who conversations to actually like have some meat on the bone. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. I still think it comes down to amount of chips as the best player on your team in the modern era. You got to say modern era because Wilt, not even Wilt, Bill got so much, but I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, if we do the same thing, then that, I mean, that's why I actually like it. So if we apply what I'm saying to what you're saying, it just confirms what we've been saying about this era and why there's not a best player. Because no one has won significantly more than anybody else in this era. But there's no distance in the field. No one's created any distance in winning.
Right.
It's